Dr. James Sullivan adjusted his collar nervously as the crystalline doors of the Nexus Trade Summit's main conference hall slid open. With a melodic chime, the opulent chamber gleamed with polished metals and exotic stones from a dozen worlds, its vast windows offering a breathtaking view of the binary star system that bathed everything in golden light. Representatives from across the galaxy mingled beneath floating holographic displays, showcasing trade agreements worth trillions of credits. James had never wanted to be here. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, he was supposed to advise on biological compatibility standards, a euphemism that made his stomach turn. The human delegation needed his expertise to navigate the complex web of interspecies commerce, but every handshake felt like a compromise of his principles. Dr. Sullivan, the booming voice, belonged to the Extraterrestrial, the Veilthic Consortium's chief negotiator. The reptilian alien approached with his characteristic predatory grin, his scaled hide reflecting the chamber's ambient light. The Earth delegation has been most accommodating. We have prepared a special gesture of appreciation. James forced a diplomatic smile. That's really not necessary, Thexgar. The trade agreements speak for themselves. Nonsense. Voss gestured grandly toward the chamber's side entrance. The consortium believes in cementing partnerships with personal touches. Please accept this token of our friendship. The doors opened, and James's breath caught in his throat. A young woman entered, her movements graceful despite the obvious restraint of her situation. Her skin held an otherworldly luminescence, shifting between silver and blue like moonlight on water. Her eyes, large and expressive, met his for just a moment, before she lowered her gaze in learned submission. This is a Silthry companion, Voss announced proudly. Her kind are prized throughout the galaxy for their empathic abilities and natural grace. She has been trained in diplomacy, linguistics, and cultural adaptation. Consider her our gift to strengthen the bond between our peoples. James felt the blood drain from his face. Around the chamber, other diplomats nodded approvingly. As if this were merely another business transaction, the woman, barely more than a girl, really stood perfectly still, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands trembled slightly at her sides. This is... James struggled for words that wouldn't cause a diplomatic incident. This is very generous. But I'm not sure Earth's customs are adaptable, interrupted Ambassador Chen, the head of Earth's delegation. Her smile was steel wrapped in silk. Dr. Sullivan appreciates the consortium's thoughtfulness. Don't you, Doctor? The weight of expectation pressed down on him. Refusal would jeopardize treaties that could bring Earth technologies to cure diseases, solve energy crises, save millions of lives. But accepting meant becoming complicit in something that violated every principle he held dear. What's your name? He asked quietly, addressing the Silthry directly. The question caused a ripple of surprise through the nearby observers. Voss's expression darkened slightly. Companions are designated by their owners, Dr. Sullivan. She is now yours to name as you see fit. But James kept his eyes on her, waiting. For a moment, something flickered in her luminous gaze, surprise, then a flash of something that might have been hope. Lyra, she whispered, so softly he almost missed it. My name was as Lyra. The simple act of speaking her own name seemed to unlock something in her posture. Her chin lifted slightly, and for just an instant, James glimpsed the person she had been before the slavers broke her spirit. Lyra, he repeated, committing it to memory. I'm James. Voss stepped forward impatiently. The transfer documents are prepared. She is legally yours under consortium law, and your government has agreed to honor such arrangements. Treat her well, Dr. Sullivan. Such specimens are rare and valuable. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed, James found himself walking beside Lyra toward the guest quarters. Neither spoke, but he could feel her confusion, perhaps hope, radiating from her like heat from a star. That night, as binary suns set beyond his suit's panoramic windows, James made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He wouldn't just free her, he would help her remember who she truly was. The guest quarters were luxurious by any standard, with adaptive climate control and a view of the nebula that had drawn traders to this system for centuries. But to Lyra, accustomed to the sterile confines of consortium holding cells, it might as well have been a palace. She stood uncertainly by the enormous viewport, her reflection ghost-like in the reinforced transparent aluminum. James watched her from across the room, his mind racing. The neural compliance implant at the base of her neck pulsed with a soft blue light, a constant reminder of her bondage. He'd studied the technology during his preparation for the summit. The devices were designed to suppress aggression and independent thought while enhancing docility and responsiveness to commands. "Lyra," he said gently. She turned immediately, conditioned to respond to her name when spoken by her owner. The automatic response made his stomach churn. "You don't have to stand there. This is your space too." Confusion flickered across her features. "I don't understand." "Sit, rest, do whatever feels comfortable." He gestured to the plush seating area. "I'm not going to hurt you." She moved carefully to the edge of a chair, perching like a bird ready to take flight. "You're not like the others," she observed, her voice carrying subtle harmonics that seemed to resonate in his chest. "What do you mean?" "Your emotions." She touched her temple delicately. "They're complicated. Fear, anger, sadness, but also something else, something warm." Her eyes widened as if she'd spoken out of turn. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't analyze you without permission." James leaned forward intently. "You can sense emotions, even with that implant." The question seemed to unlock something in her. "The implant dulls it, but can't eliminate it entirely. It's who we are, who the Silthri are. We feel what others feel, know their deepest truths." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. "It's why they conquered us, why they broke us." "Tell me," James said softly. Lyra's luminous eyes seemed to look through him, into memories that had been buried, but not destroyed. "My people were explorers, mediators, healers. Our homeworld, Silthan, was a place of crystal cities and singing forests. We could sense the emotional resonance of entire ecosystems, help resolve conflicts between species, heal trauma with touch and understanding." She stood and moved to the viewport, her reflection overlaying the distant stars. "But empathy is dangerous to those who rule through fear." The consortium couldn't control a species that could sense their lies, their cruelty, their deepest insecurities. So they invaded, claiming we were too dangerous to remain free. "How long ago?" 67 standard years. They've been breeding us ever since, selecting for docility, training us to suppress our gifts. Most Silthri now are shadows of what we once were." She turned back to him, and her eyes blazed with inner fire. "But some of us remember. We're called keepers, guardians of our people's true nature." James felt pieces clicking into place. "That's why you're so valuable. That's why they gave you to me specifically. You're a scientist, someone who studies life itself. They thought your appreciation for my exotic biology would make you a particularly satisfied owner." The bitterness in her voice was sharp as broken glass. "They were wrong." He stood and approached her carefully. "Lyra, I need you to understand something. I never wanted to own another sentient being. The moment I saw you, I knew I had to find a way to free you." Her hands flew to her mouth in shock. "You can't. They'll kill you." They can try." James's voice carried a determination that surprised them both. "I've been researching the implant technology. I think I can remove it safely. But once I do, there's no going back for either of us." Lyra stared at him for a long moment, her empathic abilities reading layers of truth in his words. Finally, she nodded. "I've been a slave for 7 years, Dr. Sullivan. 7 years of having my thoughts monitored, my will suppressed, my very identity erased. If you're offering me a chance to be free, truly free, then I'll take it, whatever the cost." James moved to his research equipment, pulling up technical schematics on his portable workstation. "Call me James, and Lyra, once we do this, they'll hunt us both. Are you prepared for that?" She joined him at the workstation, her presence somehow making the cramped space feel less lonely. "James," she said, testing his name, "there's something else you need to know. I'm not just any keeper. I'm the last one who remembers the location of the sanctuary. A sanctuary? A hidden refuge where free Silthri gathered during the invasion. If it still exists, if other keepers survived." Her voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "We could save my people, all of them." As James prepared the neural disruptor that would sever her chains, he realized they weren't just planning an escape. They were about to ignite a revolution that could free an entire enslaved species. Asterisk. The neural disruptor hummed with barely contained energy as James made final calibrations. To its frequency harmonics, Lyra lay on the medical scanner he'd requisitioned. Her silver hair spread across the examination table like liquid starlight. The compliance implant pulsed steadily at the base of her skull, a technological parasite that had controlled her thoughts for 7 years. The procedure should be painless, James explained, though his hands trembled slightly as he positioned the device. The disruptor will overload the implant's neural pathways, causing it to detach. But once it's gone, I'll be free. Lyra's voice carried wonder and terror in equal measure. And the consortium will know immediately. These implants transmit status reports every hour. James nodded grimly. We'll have maybe 60 minutes before they realize what's happened. I've prepared false identification documents and passage to the free colonies. But we need to move fast. James, her luminous eyes fixed on his. Before you do this, you need to understand what you're truly freeing. Keepers aren't just empaths, we're living archives of Silthry culture, history, and power. I carry the memories, songs, and secrets of an entire civilization. The consortium considers us weapons of mass destruction. He met her gaze steadily. All the more reason to set you free. The disruptor activated with a crystalline chime. Energy cascaded around the implant in spiraling patterns of light, each pulse causing the device to flicker and spark. Lyra's back arched as alien circuitry fought against the override, her body convulsing as competing signals warred in her nervous system. Then, suddenly, silence. The implant went dark and clattered to the floor like a discarded shackle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Lyra gasped a sound of pure wonder as her true consciousness flooded back. I can think, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. 7 years of fog, of artificial compliance, and now, she sat up slowly, her movements now carrying an entirely different quality, purposeful, graceful. Dangerous, James, I can feel everything. The fear of the guards outside, the excitement of traders in the commercial sector, the loneliness of a cargo hauler in the docking bay. Her eyes snapped open wide, pupils dilating as she processed the torrent of emotional information. And something else, something terrible. She grabbed his arm urgently. There's a consortium enforcer ship approaching the station. They know. James felt his blood turn to ice. That's impossible. The implant just went offline, not the implant. Lyra was already moving, gathering the few possessions James had provided for their escape. They can sense when a keeper awakens. It's like a psychic shockwave across empathic networks. Every consortium telepath within light years just felt me come alive. Alarms began blaring throughout the station as they sealed their emergency packs. The gentle hum of normal operations shifted to the harsh claxons of security alert. Over the intercom, a metallic voice announced, "Attention all residents and visitors. The station is now under consortium security protocols. All movement is restricted pending completion of enforcement operations." Enforcement operations, Lyra spat, her newfound freedom manifesting as righteous anger. They're here for me. James sealed the last of their supplies and shouldered his pack. Then we don't give them the chance to take you. He activated his workstation's secure channel. I'm sending a message to Captain Torres on the independent freighter Stellar Wind. She owes me a favor from the Kepler biodiversity surveys. As he transmitted their desperate plea for extraction, Lyra moved to the viewport. Her reflection showed a transformation that took his breath away. Where before stood a broken slave, now stood someone who radiated quiet power and determination. James, she said softly, if we're captured, they won't just re-implant me. They'll dissect my brain to extract every memory, every song, every secret of my people. And you. She turned to face him. They'll make an example of you. The human who dared to free a keeper will become a warning to anyone else tempted by compassion. Then we don't get caught. His reply was simple, but she could sense the layers of fear and determination beneath his words. A proximity alarm chimed as a sleek consortium enforcer vessel docked with the station. Through the transparent walls of the docking tube, they could see armored figures moving with military precision. Captain Torres is inbound, James reported, reading his communite. Bay 47 in 12 minutes. But the enforcers will be searching every compartment by then. Lyra closed her eyes, extending her consciousness through the station's population. There's another way. The waste processing levels are largely automated, and I can sense a maintenance tunnel that leads directly to the docking bays. But James, she opened her eyes, and he saw ancient sorrow there. Once we run, we can never stop. The consortium doesn't forgive, and they never forget. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside their quarters. James looked at this remarkable woman, no longer a slave, but a warrior preparing for battle, and made his choice. Then we'd better make it count, he said, activating the emergency manual lock on their door. If we're going to be fugitives, let's be the kind that makes a difference. As they slipped into the station's service corridors, leaving behind the safety of civilized space, neither fully understood that their escape was about to trigger the largest slave rebellion in galactic history. The maintenance tunnels beneath Nexus Trade Station hummed with the constant thrum of life support systems and waste processors. James followed Lyra through the narrow passages, marveling at how her empathic abilities let her navigate the maze of service corridors. By sensing the emotional signatures of beings throughout the station, her freedom had awakened something magnificent and terrifying. She moved like liquid shadow, every sense attuned to the psychic landscape around them. The enforcers are systematic, she whispered as they paused at a junction. They're scanning level by level, but their emotions, James, they're not just looking for us. They're terrified. Of what? Of what my awakening means. Her luminous eyes reflected the tunnel's dim lighting. I'm broadcasting on frequencies the consortium thought they'd suppressed. Every enslaved Silthri in this system can feel it, the possibility of freedom. They emerged into docking bay 47 just as the battered hull of the Stellar Wind settled onto its landing struts. Captain Elena Torres stood at the cargo ramp, her weathered face grim with understanding. The former Earth Defense Force pilot had seen enough injustice in her years running contraband to recognize it. When it found her doorstep, Dr. Sullivan, she called, waving them toward the ship. Whatever you've gotten yourself into, it's got the whole station buzzing like a kicked hornet's nest. Elena, meet Lyra, James said as they rushed up the ramp. We need passage to the free colonies, and we need it now. Torres finished, already sealing the ship. I can see that. But Doc, you should know my crew's picked up some interesting chatter on the consortium enforcement channels. This isn't just about you two anymore. The ship lifted off with practiced smoothness. But instead of heading for the hyperspace jump point, Torres set course for the system's outer asteroid belt. We're making a detour first, she explained. There's someone you need to meet. 3 hours later, they docked with what appeared to be a derelict mining station, hidden in the shadow of a massive asteroid. But as they entered the airlock, James realized the dereliction was carefully crafted camouflage. Inside, the station buzzed with activity, dozens of beings working with purpose and urgency. Welcome to Liberation Station, said a voice behind them. They turned to find a tall, elegant woman whose skin held the same luminous quality as Lyra's, though marked with the scars of old neural implant surgeries. I am Keeper Senna, and you, young sister, are the miracle we've been waiting for. Lyra gasped, another keeper. But how did I survive? How did we build this? Senna gestured to the bustling operation around them. The same way all revolutions begin, one active conscience at a time. Dr. Sullivan, your message to Captain Torres was intercepted by our network. We've been monitoring consortium communications for years, waiting for this moment. James looked around in amazement. The station housed not just Silthri refugees, but members of a dozen species, former consortium officials, escaped slaves, sympathetic traders, even a few reformed enforcers. At workstations throughout the facility, they coordinated rescue operations, forged identity documents, and maintained the hidden routes that had come to be known as the Underground Railroad. This is incredible, James breathed. How many have you saved? Nearly 3,000 over the past 5 years, Senna replied proudly. But Lyra's awakening changes everything. The psychic pulse she created when you freed her has been felt across 3 sectors. Enslaved Silthri are remembering who they were, what they've lost. The consortium's control is beginning to crack. A technician approached with urgent data. Keeper Senna, we're receiving distress signals from 17 different systems. Silthri are attempting to break their conditioning. Some are trying to escape, others are. He paused meaningfully. Others are becoming dangerous to their owners. Lyra stepped forward, her newfound authority evident. They need guidance, a keeper's voice to help them through the transition. But the risk is worth taking, Senna interrupted. For too long we've worked in shadows, saving individuals while the system endured. You've given us the chance to save our entire species. Over the next several hours, James watched in awe as the two keepers worked together, using quantum encrypted communications to reach awakening Silthri across the galaxy. Lyra's voice, carrying harmonics that resonated directly with Silthri neural patterns, became a beacon of hope for thousands of enslaved minds. But their success came with a price. As more Silthri awakened, consortium retaliation grew swift and brutal. Reports flooded in of mass executions, of entire companion populations being destroyed rather than risk their escape. We're at a tipping point, Torres observed grimly. As she reviewed the tactical situation, the consortium won't let this rebellion spread. They're mobilizing their entire enforcement fleet. James found Lyra at the station's observation deck, staring out at the stars. Her liberation had cost so much already. How many would die? Because he'd chosen to free one enslaved woman. I can feel your guilt, she said softly. But James, you need to understand we were dying anyway. Slowly, generation by generation. But dying nonetheless. You didn't start this war. You just gave us the chance to fight it. Behind them, Senna approached with a grim expression. The consortium has issued an ultimatum. Surrender the awakened keepers within 48 hours, or they'll begin systematic elimination of all Silthri in their territory. James felt the weight of impossible choices settling on his shoulders. How many? Nearly 500,000 souls, Senna replied quietly. Lyra straightened, and James could see the ancient strength of her people rising within her. Then we have 48 hours to give them a reason to fight instead of die. The sanctuary, if it still exists, if the old archives survived, we might have a weapon they never expected us to keep. What kind of weapon? James asked. Her smile was sharp as starlight. The truth, the real history of what the consortium did to us, broadcast on every frequency in the galaxy. Some weapons destroy bodies, James. Others destroy lies, and lies are all the consortium has left. The journey to the sanctuary took them through sectors of space that existed only in keeper memory coordinates passed down through generations, hidden in songs and stories that the consortium had failed to completely erase. Lyra guided their small fleet of liberation ships through asteroid fields and stellar nurseries, following psychic landmarks that only awakened Silthri could perceive. There, she whispered as they emerged from a nebula that shimmered with impossible colors. Silthan's shadow. Before them hung a moon-sized artifact of crystalline architecture, its surfaces reflecting starlight in patterns that seemed to shift with their thoughts. The sanctuary was not built but grown, shaped by Silthri biotechnology into a living memorial of their lost civilization. By the stars, Captain Torres breathed. It's beautiful. It's more than that, Keeper Senna added as their ships approached. The docking structures that blossomed from the sanctuary's surface, its hope made manifest. James felt the weight of history as they entered the sanctuary's halls. The walls hummed with stored memories, psychic imprints of 1 billion Silthri who had lived and loved, and dreamed before the consortium's conquest. Here were libraries of song, archives of empathic knowledge, and technologies that the galaxy had forgotten existed. But they weren't alone. As they made their way to the central chamber, they encountered other survivors' keepers who had found their way home, liberated Silthri arriving in growing numbers, and even members of other species who had chosen to join their cause. The broadcast array is intact, reported Zara, a former consortium communications officer whose conscience had led her to defect. We can reach every inhabited system in the galaxy simultaneously, but we'll need to move fast. The consortium fleet will be here within hours. In the sanctuary's heart, they found what they had come for: the archive of truth. Crystalline storage matrices held complete records of the Silthri civilization, the real story of the consortium's invasion and evidence of crimes that span generations. More importantly, they contain something the consortium had never suspected: detailed documentation of every member world's complicity in the slave trade. "This is it," Lyra said, her hands moving across the archive's interfaces with practiced familiarity. Genetic records of every Silthery taken, financial records of every transaction, video evidence of every atrocity. But more than that, it contains the empathic resonance patterns of our entire species. Every Silthery who ever lived, their emotional signature preserved in quantum crystal. James understood immediately. "You can awaken them all at once." "Not just awaken," Senna corrected. "We can give them back everything: their memories, their culture, their power. But the psychic shockwave will be enormous. Every empath in the galaxy will feel it. And the consortium will know exactly where we are." Torres finished grimly. "How long do we have?" "The broadcast will take 17 minutes to propagate across the galactic communications network," Zara reported. "But the psychic component will be instantaneous. The moment we activate the archive, every Silthery in existence will remember who they truly are." Alarms echoed through the sanctuary as consortium enforcement fleets dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Hundreds of ships, more firepower than had been assembled since the original conquest. They had perhaps 30 minutes before the first wave reached the sanctuary. "They'll destroy this place," James said quietly. "All of this history, this beauty, it'll be lost forever." Lyra took his hand, her touch warm with empathic connection. "Some things are worth dying for, James. Freedom is one of them. But more than that," she smiled, and he saw ancient joy in her expression. "We're not just dying, we're being reborn." The activation sequence began with a harmonic chord that seemed to emerge from the sanctuary's very structure. As Lyra and Senna joined their voices with the archive, reality itself seemed to sing. The crystalline walls blazed with light as centuries of stored memory cascaded through quantum channels, reaching across the galaxy to touch every Silthery mind. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 different circumstances, enslaved beings suddenly remembered their names. They remembered crystal cities and singing forests, the warmth of community and the joy of empathic connection. They remembered what they had lost, and they remembered how to fight. The psychic wave rolled outward like an expanding sphere of awakening consciousness. On luxury worlds, Silthery companions turned to their owners with eyes blazing with newfound power. In industrial sectors, enslaved workers felt their suppressed abilities flooding back. In consortium research facilities, test subjects broke, free of their restraints with strength they had forgotten they possessed. "It's working." Senna gasped, her consciousness expanded across the galactic empathic network. "They're rising, all of them, everywhere, rising together." The first consortium ships reached the sanctuary as the broadcast entered its final phase. Energy weapons blazed against the crystalline shields, but the ancient defenses held. For a moment, "Broadcast complete," Zara announced. "Every news network, every communication channel in the galaxy now has the complete evidence of consortium crimes. They can't suppress this." James watched the tactical display as more enforcement ships arrived. They were outnumbered 1,000-1, but somehow it didn't matter. Across the galaxy, a species was remembering how to be free. The consortium built their empire on lies and fear. Lyra said as the first shield generators began to fail, "But empathy is stronger than fear, and truth is stronger than lies. Whatever happens here, we've already won." The final wave of consortium ships closed in, their weapons charging for a decisive strike. But then something impossible happened. Half the fleet suddenly stopped firing. On dozens of ships, enslaved Silthery crew members had awakened to their true nature and were turning against their captors. "This is Commander Thex of the Liberation Fleet," came a voice over the communications ray, a Silthery voice, strong and proud and free. "All liberated vessels converge on the sanctuary. It's time to go home." As James watched enslaved beings across the galaxy claim their freedom, he realized that their desperate gamble had become something greater. They hadn't just sparked a rebellion, they had awakened a civilization. The Silthery dawn had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.